The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and X-Zone TV. Once again, I'd like to welcome our newest affiliate to the X-Zone broadcast family, KKRP, AM 950, Rainbow 95 in the beautiful state of Oklahoma. If you'd like to give us a call, toll-free worldwide, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is Joseph Laycock. He is a doctoral candidate at Boston University studying religion and society and is the author of Vampires Today, The Truth About Modern Vampirism. And Joseph, welcome to the X-Zone. Joe, are you there? It seems, Joseph, are you there? It seems that we may have lost our guest. Hi, Joseph. Are you there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Welcome back. Technology is great when it works, so I can understand your frustration sometimes. Where did the interest in vampires come from?
Well, it's interesting. Most people have seen all the work that I've done on vampires, and they assume that I must have been some sort of huge vampire fanatic for my whole life. Which actually isn't the case. I know other scholars where that definitely is the case. But this was actually sort of a crime of opportunity. I was a high school teacher in Atlanta, and I learned of work being done by a group called the Atlanta Vampire Alliance. And I introduced myself to them, and I thought this would be sort of a good into this community, and this would make a paper that would sort of draw attention to my work as a young scholar. And of course, the paper was originally presented at a conference on new religious movements, and it was a big hit. And Prager came up to me afterwards and said, we would really like you to make this into a book, because they knew what I didn't know, which was this whole Twilight thing was pretty big in 2009. So they were seeking to sort of capitalize on the popular interest in vampires.
Joseph, you and I have to take a commercial break, but we will be back in 2 minutes. Thanks very much for taking time out of your busy day to join us tonight here on the X-Zone.
Great to be here.
X-Zone Nation, Joseph Laycock is our special guest. He is the author of Vampires Today, The Truth About Modern Vampirism. His website is http://people.bu.edu/JLAY. That's people.bu.edu/JLAY. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And Hamilton is in between the cities of Toronto and Niagara Falls on Lake Ontario. We're smack dab in the middle of the Great Lakes Triangle. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. Don't go away. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Hi everyone, Rob McConnell here, and I wanted to spend a moment on internet streaming. Everybody has heard about internet streaming, but not many know much about it. Did you know the internet streams just about everything?
Movies.
From new releases to old classics.
TV shows.
Almost every show, every episode, and much more. But the question has always been, how do you do it? Well now, thanks to the folks at 123 Ready TV, I have the answer for you. They have developed a simple program app, 123 Ready TV, that you install on your Windows PC, Android smartphone, or Android tablet that can have you streaming like a pro in less than 5 minutes. You truly won't believe how much is available or how easy it is to do until you try. And for a one-time cost of only $19.99, this product is a real winner. To learn more about 123 Ready TV, visit our website at www.xzbn.net. Joseph Laycock is our special guest, X-Zone Nation. He is the author of Vampires Today, The Truth About Modern Vampirism. Now tell me, Joseph, what is a real vampire, and what types of vampires are there from this community?
Well, this is a community of people that for a variety of reasons, call themselves vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using that word in a very specific sense. They don't actually believe that they are undead or will burn in the sunlight or sparkle in the sunlight or anything like that. And there's a few different types of individuals that make up this community. On the one hand, you have what are called lifestyle vampires. And these are probably the easiest to spot. You may have seen one. They tend to wear Victorian clothing, prosthetic fangs, contact lenses. And some of them may take this very, very seriously. There are even cases of people sleeping in coffins and things like this. But at the end of the day, they say this is just a lifestyle choice that I'm very passionate about. These are people that sort of admire and want to emulate the image of the vampire. Then you have people that are quote-unquote real vampires.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is that someone who describes himself as a real vampire says, this is not a lifestyle choice. I didn't choose to be this way. I was essentially born this way. And most of them will say what makes them a vampire is that to maintain their health, and that's defined broadly as mental, physical, and spiritual health, they have to feed. And so this leads us to the two major categories within real vampirism. You have individuals that actually drink blood, and these are called sanguinarian vampires within the community. Some of them drink animal blood, but usually it is small quantities of human blood that has been donated to them. And then you have the more common individuals called psychic vampires. Mm-hmm. And these individuals say that they don't have to drink blood, but that they sort of absorb the energy or kind of the life force, if you will, of people around them, and that if they don't get a supply of that energy, that their health will gradually deteriorate. So those are the three main types of vampires that comprise this community.
Are vampires mostly teenagers, Joseph?
That's interesting. The assumption is that this is an internet phenomenon and that most of the people that make up this community are teenagers. And we now have some statistics produced by the Atlanta Vampire Alliance that shows that the majority, the largest demographic, are in fact teenagers, and many of these people may not think of themselves as vampires in 5 years or 10 years. It may be something that they grow out of. But during the research for this book, I met several vampire grandmothers. I met people in their 40s, 50s, from all walks of life, with all different degrees of education that identify as vampires, and in some cases have since the 1970s or earlier. So while there are a lot of teenagers in this community, It is not just a teen phenomenon. It appears to be here to stay.
What would a grandmother get out of being a vampire? Are the people that you've talked to, were they born vampires, or was this something that, for some unknown reason, they wanted to do? And what kind of sociological benefit would being a vampire have to anyone?
Right. Well, this all depends on sort of how you look at it. If you look at it as an outsider, then you immediately start to jump to sort of psychological theories of, were these people abused? Is this why they have come to identify as a vampire? Do they feel alienated from society? If you look at it, however, from an insider perspective, they say that we were born this way, and we don't get anything out of it. In fact, I've met some vampires that said if they were given the choice, they would prefer to be like everybody else. They don't really like being different. But for vampires, they say this is like a race or having a medical condition or a sexual orientation. It's just part of their identity that they have no control over.
Let me ask you this. Would you consider vampirism a cult?
Well, that's originally why I began studying this group. I'm a religion scholar, and there has been previous work by religion scholars on this community.
Right.
And originally, that's what we assumed, was that this was some sort of religious cult. And there are associations between a vampire community and groups like the Church of Satan. If you're interested in vampires, you may also be interested in sort of dark spirituality and things like this. But what I found when I actually did my research was that there were plenty of vampires, especially in the South where I was working, that go to church every Sunday, and they identify as Christians. So for a few of them, they said, vampirism is a spiritual path or even a religion to me. But many of them were, members of all different religions, including atheism. And this is one of the things that I argue in the book, is that when someone makes a claim that is so different from our everyday reality, like I am a vampire, we only have a few ways to sort of interpret that. And the two biggest ways that we have are either, well, you're just crazy, you have a mental illness, or this is a religious belief, right? And so I think that we need a third way to kind of think about this community, as neither dismissing them as mentally ill or interpreting this as a religion. It seems to be a third box.
Speaking about religion, there's a little bit of vampirism in Christianity, because at the Last Supper, didn't Christ make a reference to the drinking of his wine as his blood?
That's right, and there have been some very kind of edgy religion scholars that have noted all of the connections between vampires and, of course, Jesus, who rises from the grave.
From the grave, right.
And has people drink his blood and this sort of thing. It's interesting. I mean, there are references to drinking blood, of course, in many different cultures. And there is some speculation that our idea of vampires is basically a combination of pagan and shamanic beliefs from Eastern Europe, and that these beliefs were changed basically during the Dark Ages by the Orthodox Church. And that may be how this element of drinking blood became so important in vampire stories. So it is possible there's a direct connection between vampire legends and Christianity.
Count Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, was he really a vampire?
If you talk to a Romanian, they will say absolutely not, and this is terribly offensive. And they say this is exactly like if we believed that Abraham Lincoln had been a vampire. Vlad the Impaler was, of course, had this reputation as being a dictator and doing anything that was necessary to protect Wallachia, his kingdom, from the Turks. Although some historians have said, history is written by the winners.
Yes.
And if you wanted to discredit a king in this day, what you did was you wrote lots of nasty stories about all the awful things that they did. So probably some of these stories are true, and some of them are exaggerated. But when Bram Stoker set out to write his story, Dracula, there were already all of these books in English about Vlad the Impaler and all the horrible things he had done, the impalements, the torture and things like this. And so he thought that this would be an interesting basis to write his book about vampires.
What is it like inside a vampire community?
Well, it's interesting. There are a lot of kind of different levels of participation. So some groups of vampires are more how you would, I guess, imagine it. They have courts of vampires that they attend, and they dress the part in Victorian clothing and leather corsets and things like this. And they have enormous parties like the Endless Night Festival in New Orleans. The group that I primarily worked with, though, is the Atlanta Vampire Alliance, and they are almost the opposite. These are very down-to-earth, studious, hardworking people, and they are almost sort of proud of the fact that they don't go to parties and stay up all night sort of churning out data about this community. And the reason they do that is because they believe that this is not about the way they dress or what parties that they go to, that this is actually a very serious condition that makes them different from other people, and they want to study that. So you do have vampires that look the part, and then you have people that are nurses, police officers, or live in the suburbs, sit next to you in church, and you would never, ever know that they're a vampire.
Is there any physiological or psychological data that would actually enhance their belief that vampirism is indeed a condition?
Well, the only data we have right now is produced by the community itself in this survey by the Atlanta Vampire Alliance, which is basically amateur science. Now, they did a very good job in designing the survey, and they received interviews from 1,000 people, 1,000 self-identified vampires. So it's a significant body of data, but it is ultimately suspect because it comes from within the community. And what they have said is, if you don't believe our findings, then we challenge you to do your own research, basically do better than what we have done. And so their preliminary data does show a very high rate of certain diseases like fibromyalgia, migraine headaches, this sort of thing. And they're interested in attracting the attention of recognized scientists that will take this further and do more detailed, more official research on this community. So it remains to be seen if there's anything there.
All right, Joseph, please stand by. You and I have to take our commercial break with the news at the bottom of the hour right now. Exonation Joseph Laycock is our special guest. He's the author of Vampires Today, The Truth About Modern Vampirism. His website is... You got your pens and pencils ready? Okay, great. people.bu.edu/JLay. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues right here on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and X Zone TV. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Hi everyone, Rob McConnell here, and I wanted to spend a moment on internet streaming. Everybody has heard about internet streaming, but not many know much about it. Did you know the internet streams just about everything?
Movies,
From new releases to old classics.
TV shows,
Almost every show, every episode, and much more. But the question has always been, how do you do it? Well now, thanks to the folks at 123 Ready TV, I have the answer for you. They have developed a simple program app, 123 Ready TV, that you install on your Windows PC, Android smartphone, or Android tablet that can have you streaming like a pro in less than 5 minutes. You truly won't believe how much is available or how easy it is to do until you try. And for a one-time cost of only $19.99, this product is a real winner. To learn more about 123 Ready TV, visit our website at www.xzbn.net.
Joseph Laycock is our special guest. We're talking about vampires this hour, Exonation. Joseph is the author of Vampires Today, The Truth About Modern Vampirism. And Joseph, what is the hierarchy in a vampire community?
Well, it's interesting. Most of the people that are interested in this type of community are sort of rebellious and actually very suspicious of hierarchy. And so there are discussions as whether this is actually a problem to the community getting organized, that no one sort of wants to accept a leader or a president or something like that. However, you have different sort of cultures of vampirism throughout the country. And so in the South, where I did my research, individuals that I worked with were very sort of democratic in how they organize themselves. Mm-hmm. If you go out to Los Angeles, no one really cares that you're a vampire. It's not it doesn't really raise an eyebrow in LA. So the vampires out there are sort of anarchic. There isn't really an organization at all. And then if you go to New York is kind of the most hierarchical and sort of Baroque vampire culture, where you do have sort of tiers of vampires, and they'll often use terminology for this. So an elder, of course, would indicate someone that's very high up and has been around for a long time in the community and has some authority. Whereas a neonate or a neophyte would refer to someone that has only sort of recently awakened to become part of this community. So there are elements of hierarchy, but there is not sort of a king of the vampires or anything like that.
How long was your research with the Atlanta Vampire Alliance, and did you ever feel that you were in any danger while you were doing research for your book?
It's interesting. There have been other people that have tried to sort of break into this community and do research on it, and these are mostly journalists, and they're mostly women. And so if you read books like Piercing the Darkness by Catherine Ramsland, she was a journalist, and she took the opposite approach from me, which was that she tried to disguise herself as a vampire and sort of blend in these nightclubs in New York. And so the women describe kind of frightening experiences in clubs dealing with strangers wearing fangs and things like this. I had experienced nothing like that for a variety of reasons, one of which is I'm a man, and I recognize that people interact with me differently because of that, because of essentially male privilege. And then the other was that the group I was working with was not primarily interested in going to nightclubs and things like that. I was much more likely to observe vampires debating about what type of methodology they want to use to organize their data, as opposed to watching vampires in a nightclub put someone on a flogging rack and flog them. So I had a very different experience for that reason. In total, my sort of close work with the Atlanta Vampire Alliance, doing observations and interviews, lasted about 18 months, and I'm still in contact with them. This is a community that I still try to keep up with.
Who's Rod Farrell?
Rod Farrell was a teenager in 1996, and he identified as a vampire in a fairly delusional way, and he seemed to have been very, very gifted, very intelligent, very imaginative, and so he was able to sort of spin these elaborate stories about how he was a vampire and had lived numerous lives on Earth and had sort of a great destiny involving the end of the world, and attracted this sort of coterie of other teenagers around him. Unfortunately, his home life was just terrible. All sorts of abuse, drug addiction, things like this. And probably because of that, that led to a situation where he drove to Florida to visit an ex-girlfriend with this coterie of teenagers, and ended up killing the girl's parents. And this was a very high-profile case in 1996.
Whoops. Are you still there? Did we lose our guest again? Oh, geez. You've got to love Skype. Sometimes it works, and he's back. Okay, sorry about that. Apparently, we lost you there for a second.
This darn Skype. I'm hearing a little bit of an echo on my end. Are you hearing that as well?
Yeah, you're coming across chattered right now.
Maybe I should stop and call again.
All right, sure. Why don't you do that, and I'll let the listeners know how they can find out more about you on the website while you're doing that. Exonation, our special guest this hour is Joseph Laycock. He is a doctoral candidate at Boston University, and he is studying religion and society and is the author of Vampires Today, The Truth About Modern Vampirism. His website is people.bu.edu/JLAY. All right, there, I see you're back with us. And during your research, did you ever come across someone who you believed or thought might be one of these very old vampires who has gone from life to life, from life to life, and could be very old?
Well, most individuals in this community will say that you can't actually be undead or immortal. It's gotten to the point where if you were to go onto a vampire forum or chat room and say that you were a 400-year-old vampire, you would be asked to leave. They would say, "Don't be silly." But there are vampires that believe in what they would call serial immortality, right? The immortality of going from one reincarnation to another. And so individuals like Michelle Belanger is a very good example. Right? She is many, many things, an artist, a musician, a writer, and then also a psychic and a vampire. And so with her group House Keperu out in Ohio, they believe that vampirism is sort of a spiritual path that goes with you from life to life, and that being a vampire sort of enables you to recall more from your previous lives, and that is, in a sense, a form of immortality.
But there are many people that have the same talents that Michelle have who are not vampires.
Right. I don't think that they claim a monopoly on having these types of abilities. In fact, they specifically say that they don't. If you read the Psychic Vampire Codex, which is one of the earliest sort of books of vampire metaphysics written by Michelle Belanger, she cautions her audience, who are presumably other vampires. There's lots of other people out there that can do these sorts of things, and so sometimes within the community they'll use the term awakened in a broader sense to refer not only to vampires but to people like psychics and other sorts of people that have these types of abilities.
What about Susan Walsh, the reporter who disappeared in 1996? Did the vampires get her?
Again, this is the same year in which Rod Farrell killed this poor couple down in Florida. So this was really a year of very bad press for the vampire community. Susan Wallace disappeared. She was doing a story on vampires, and so it isn't known what happened to her. And there was an article about her just last December on Nancy Grace. It's still an open case. It's not known if she's alive or dead. My personal theory, though, is that it probably wasn't vampires. Shortly before her disappearance, she had written an article on the Russian mafia and their role in human trafficking in New York, and had actually named members of the Russian mafia in the story. So if she disappeared, I think that's probably the reason, and not because of vampires. But it's become sort of a point of sort of mystique, especially for the New York vampires. It's one of these things that has led to kind of conspiracy theories within the community, and if you were around at the time that Susan Wallace disappeared, that gets you a lot of cachet within the New York vampire community.
You and I were talking before about, if one of these vampires went on to a forum and said that they were 400 years old, they'd be asked to leave the forum. But have vampires ever been outed to their community?
Yes, they have, and again, this depends on what part of the country they live in, and so my research was primarily in Atlanta, which is the Bible Belt, and there were some interesting connections between the real life cases of these vampires living in a fairly conservative Christian climate, and the show True Blood on HBO, and that you don't want your neighbors to know that you're a vampire. So unfortunately, there were some cases. There was one where a vampire did an interview with a local newspaper, and unfortunately, it was a fairly small town, and there were enough details in the article that this basically outed the vampire. He was asked to leave his church and to remove his children from a private school they attended. And then more recently, the show 2020 did a piece on vampires, and this led to vampires being outed again, and one of them was actually received basically a demotion in his job in law enforcement over this, which is troubling, because if we were a meritocracy, you should be promoted or demoted based on your abilities and not on whatever interests you pursue as a private individual.
Why do you think werewolves, vampires, and other, let me see, how should I phrase this and still be delicate at the same time, and other aspects of the paranormal so captivating to society these days?
Well, that's very interesting. If you look at sort of the older stories about these beings, they are sort of monsters, and they completely live outside of society. And no one would ever want to be one. You're simply afraid of them. And so I don't think it's that these creatures have changed. I think it's that we have changed. That people living today, their identities are very personal. We don't think of ourselves as villagers or members of a community anymore. We think of ourselves as individuals, and we can go where we want, and we can do what we want, and we can live whatever sort of lifestyle we want. And so now the vampire suddenly is no longer this demonic figure that lives on the outskirts of society. In fact, we kind of sympathize with it, right? The vampire has become a symbol of rebellion and sort of individuality and the outsider. So I think as we continue to become more sort of alienated and disassociated from others in our community, the more kind of sympathy we develop for these creatures.
Is there a difference between a vampire and a goth, or are they relatively close to each other, where one just doesn't have anything to do with blood and the other... What's the difference here? Because, a number of people assume that a goth and a vampire are one and the same.
Right, and this is actually a somewhat sensitive issue. Of course, the cartoon South Park dedicated an entire episode to this, and this sort of feud between vampires and goths. So goth is ultimately a lifestyle. It's about music and clothing and this sort of thing. For some vampires, they believe it's a lifestyle, but my book is concerned primarily with people who say it's not a lifestyle choice. It's not about the way they dress, and therefore they're two different things. It's like comparing apples to oranges. Now, there are a lot of vampires that are easy to spot because they wear kind of gothic clothing, the black clothes, the Victorian styles, and so forth. But there are also plenty of vampires, again, that you would never spot. They wear jeans and T-shirts and sandals and shop at Walmart and what have you. And so the Atlanta Vampire Alliance, one of their questions was simply, do you consider yourself goth? And something like 40% of the vampires interviewed said yes, but then 60% said no. So a slight majority said, we're not goths. Mm-hmm. And I think the Atlanta Vampire Alliance was a little bit pleased by that because they're very interested in showing this isn't about the way you dress. This is about something else.
Would you say that it's a lifestyle?
Again, there's an insider and outsider perspective. If you're an outsider, then all vampires are, have in some sense chosen to do this, and it's their lifestyle. But if you're an insider, it's absolutely not a lifestyle. And this parallels the debate about the gay community, right? There are lots of people that still believe being gay is a lifestyle. But if you talk to an advocate of the gay community, say it's absolutely not a lifestyle, right? That they have no control over their sexual orientations. There's an interesting parallel there.
Joseph, stand by. You and I have to take our final break. Joseph Laycock is our special guest, X-Zone Nation. He's the author of Vampires Today, The Truth About Modern Vampirism. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Joseph Laycock is our special guest. He's the author of Vampires Today, The Truth About Modern Vampirism. His website is http://people.bu.edu/JLAY, or you can simply go to Google and Google in Joseph Laycock. It's that simple. Joseph, where is your book available?
Well, Prager is an academic publisher, so it's only available online, either through Amazon or through Prager's website, and it's pricey. So they sell primarily to universities and public libraries. If you'd like a copy, you can buy your own, or you can just ask your local public library to get a copy, and then you can read it, and others can as well.
Why is the study of vampires so important? Aren't they just weirdos?
Well, one of the important the reasons that studying religion in general is important is because America is a democratic society with freedom of religion, and we have to find a way to incorporate different types of people with different beliefs and find a way to have a harmonious society.
But how do we classify vampirism as a religion?
Well, I don't classify vampirism as a religion, but it's important to study for the same reason. If you have a neighbor that believes that they're a vampire, right, we have to find a way to be neighbors without there being some sort of problem or sort of disharmony. And so I think that vampires are sort of the kind of canary in the coal mine, and that if they're having problems because of their identity, then all of us are in trouble. A good example is this person who got in trouble at work because he was basically outed by this 2020 piece, right? If they're firing you for being a vampire, then who is safe, right? Can you be fired for liking too many horror movies, or because you are a Civil War reenactor on the weekend, or something like this, right? So it's in the interest of all of us to make sure that the vampires are not unduly harassed for their identity as vampires.
So tell me, do they like garlic? Are they afraid of a silver bullet? And what about the old stake right through the heart?
Well, of course, they'll be the first to point out a stake through the heart will kill just about anybody, vampire
True.
or human. Through the research from the Atlanta Vampire Alliance, they've asked about allergies and things like that. We haven't found any sort of consistent pattern. So garlic, silver, it doesn't look like these will be good bets against the real vampires.
Joseph, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a great hour talking to you and very enlightening when it comes to vampires. Continued success. We look forward to talking to you again in the near future.
Thank you very much.
All right, Exo Nation, Joseph Laycock has been my guest this hour. people.bu.edu/JLAY, or just go to Google or any search engine and type in Joseph Laycock Vampires, and you'll have all the information you need. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, right here in the X Zone. My name's Rob McConnell. Don't go away.